Blood gets in the strangest places. Under a rug, in a drawer. Hell, I once pulled up a chunk of brain matter out of a ceiling lamp. My point is, when you're in the business of cleaning, you can't leave a single stone unturned. All it takes is one thing out of place, one whiff of bleach, and the pigs will bring up the big guns. UV lamps, chemicals, swabs, and then the whole thing is fucked. Your client, your payday, your life, all gone because you made one minuscule mistake. I guess this is a story about that. Kind of. Story of shit hitting the fan, which was turned up to the highest speed, flinging the feces about the whole room. The word fuck get fucked by fuck. You might be wondering how someone even manages to get themselves in a position of cleaning up after other people's dirty work. Don't. All it takes is one single bad choice. One tiny misstep on the map of your morals. It's certainly not something you seek out, not something you wake up and decide to do one day. But none of that's important. I'm here to tell a story. It started off routine, regular. A random message on my burner. Some guy heard my name from another guy who knew a guy, and so on. The way these things usually work. I gave him a call, and from the panic whisper on the other side of the line, I gather that it's domestic. An argument got out of hand, and the girlfriend ended up with a knife in her throat. It happens pretty often. Well, more often than you would think. A lot of guys out here snap like a dry twig the second their masculinity's on the line. Like I said, regular. The scene was supposedly contained to a living room. Hard floors, central rug, nothing too complex. An easy $2,000 for a night's work. I instructed him to leave a scratch at the scene. Toss the phone, leave the back door unlocked, and lay low at a hotel for a couple of nights. He thanked me like a preacher praising God before cutting the line. Snapping my burner, I grabbed a new package on the shelf and went through the same process of activating it before sending a message to my regular clients so they have my new number. I packed my things and hit the road. Handheld UV, scrub brushes, nylon coveralls, body bag, and a couple gallons of what I call magic milk sitting in my duffel. The milk is a combination of chemicals I probably can't name here. My own orchestra of compounds, dangerous enough to melt skin if exposed directly. Just a couple wipes, and what was once a red stain on the floor was now cleaner than a government grow lab. Albeit, minus a layer of liqueur. So I carry some of that with me as well. Like I said, no stone. It was a longer drive, about an hour outside of the city, and it was teetering on midnight by the time I rode into suburbia. I checked the address and pulled into a picturesque yellow cottage straight out of the Better Homes magazine. The fact that a bachelor lived here surprised me. I would have guessed a mid-30s soccer mom. That's when it hit me. This wasn't his house. I sighed. These jobs had to be meticulously perfect. If it had been the killer's house, the cops would have had free reign over the crime scene since there was someone actively living in it. But a soon-to-be missing girl, her apartment would be chock full of pigs trying to sniff out a truffle. Now I treat every job as if the whole precinct would be taking magnifying glasses to the place, but I still feel the added pressure. It's not a job that gets less stressful over time. I hopped out of my car, slung the duffel, and headed for the doors as if I belong. Looking confident is a sure way to stop potential witnesses from remembering a thing about you. As instructed, the back door swung open without a hitch. Good boy. The scene would have made a fly gag. The body was there, sprawled across the floorboards, knife handle protruding from a bruised neck. But the cat, the fucking cat, that little bastard had slid through the puddle of blood which haloed the poor girl's head and painted a mural of gore all about the room. Streaks of blood weaved between the furniture legs, under the sofa, on the sofa. The thing had wreaked havoc on a poor countryside interior. And the worst part, it was nowhere to be seen. In a mild panic, I began opening doors, careful to avoid any of the streaks. I didn't need to be tracking more around the place. Not to mention I haven't even changed into my coveralls yet. Into the dining room, through the kitchen, and into a small reading room I went until, finally, I laid eyes on the little shit. I spotted a small cage in the corner, and sliding on pairs of elbow-high latex gloves, I approached a furry friend. He stopped licking blood from his paws and looked up at me, eyes wide before letting out a tiny squeak and trying to rub up against me. I grabbed it before I had the chance and carefully put it into his crate. His lock was finicky and didn't feel too strong, but it's not like the thing could burst out. The job just went from 1 room to 4. If I had a way to contact the fucker, I would have demanded more pay, but I knew he had probably already tossed the phone and disappeared. I could have left, but that would get the dude caught, and he would most definitely try to take me down with him. I was backed into a corner, fuming, pissed, getting angrier with each second. The only way forward was to clean. I put in some earbuds, turned on some music, pulled up my suit, and I got to work, transferring the body and murder weapon into the black bag. She would go by the door until it was time to leave. I took pictures of how the room was arranged and moved all the furniture to one corner of the room. First step was rolling up the central rug and tossing it into the milk bath. Thankfully, the girl had a ceramic tub. Otherwise, it would have to go in the sink bit by bit. Next, I dabbed up the wet blood with paper towels, carefully to avoid smearing. The dry stuff would be cleaned shortly. I took toothpicks to every single crack and crevice between the floorboards, scraping up dried flakes of blood. Once the pores were open, it was time for the milk. A whole gallon on the floor. squeegeed around everywhere to get into the cracks. It immediately brought up the dry blood and any stain that might have started to form. Soaking up the milk with a whole roll of Bounty, I got to work hand washing every single board with a sponge and to go get more milk. By the time I was done, the floor had lightened up a couple of shades. That was fine. The leather couch was easy. Just more paper towels and milk made it look brand new, and I rinsed it thoroughly with water to avoid taking any color out of the leather. If it had been a cloth couch, the whole thing would have had to go into a milk bath or be reupholstered. I've had to do both before. While the floor and sofa dried, I took a lint roller to every single surface in the room. The only real defense against stray hairs off my client. I took off the vent covers and cleaned out all the dust. Threw away every dish that was visible in the dishwasher. Then took the lint roller to the underside of any removable cushion. The legs of all the furniture would get some care, just in case a cat rubbed up against them. The doorknobs each got a wipe down with a damp towel, as well as the arms of each chair and every single possible points for fingerprints. When I was pleased with my work, I laid a layer of lacquer over the floor and started in on the dining room. It was the same process again and again and again until I saw the sun start to rise through the window. All things considered, I had a day or two before the police bothered doing a wellness check, but I'd rather not live in a murder victim's house any longer than necessary. After finishing the dining room, I headed to the kitchen. The mess wasn't nearly as bad here, just a trail of bloody paw prints leading around the island to the reading room. I wouldn't even have to move around the furniture this time. I checked the countertop to make sure the rogue feline hasn't run across them, and when I was happy with the results, I took a step back to scan the room in full. The stove was expensive from the look of it, a flat black top gleaming in the light from the low-hanging fixture. The refrigerator was equally nice, equipped with a touchscreen which displayed the interior temperature. I swung the door open to look for a drink and almost had a heart attack. The bottom and middle shelves were lined with mason jars, each one full of what at first appeared to be entrails. They were human organs. I took a closer look and I felt my heart start to beat regularly again. Various roots and leaves had submerged in some kind of pickling agent, each jar containing a separate curiosity. I grabbed one at random and turned it into my hands. It appeared to be a bundle of sandalwood, something you would see hippies smoking or burning. Another had a tight knot of thin entrails, taproot maybe. I set it back down and grabbed a soda from the top shelf. I was parched. I would of course take the empty can with me once it was time to leave. Closing the door, I scanned the room for a knife block. I'll have to clean and replace the murder weapon before I left. Even the dumbest cop would know a missing knife. Spinning in a slow circle, I cracked open the can and scanned the room once more. Fancy microwave, chef-level mixer. This girl clearly enjoyed cooking. Finally, I found a block perched beside a row of neatly stacked cutting boards. 2 neat rows of pristine Damascus knives glared at me from across the room. Each slot full, each knife accounted for. Something hit me then, a weird feeling that made the world seem off-kilter. I hadn't paid any attention to it because it wasn't important to the task at hand. But the knife, the murder weapon, it suddenly and harshly thrust its way into the recesses of my mind. Setting the can down, I hurried back into the living room and unzipped the body bag. It definitely wasn't a kitchen knife. I grabbed a roll of paper towels and carefully pulled the blade from puckered flesh. A thin stream of dead blood rolled down the poor girl's neck. Wiping off the sharp tooth, I examined the weapon in full. A silver tooth of the blade curved its way to the most ornate handle I've ever seen. A series of spears randomly dotted the engraved knife guard as embossed tendrils worked their way down the golden hilt. This was also engraved with an odd texture. The tendrils all met at the same pommel, a large shining globe made of some unique stone. Iron alloy? Meteorite? I ran my gloved thumb across the texture and realized with a thrill that it was a pattern, not repeating, yet uniform. Hundreds of circles sporadically sat around the whole of the handle, each one connected to another by a series of thin lines. Minuscule symbols floated within each circle, every one different from the last. This was handmade, awe-inspiring, a collectible of the highest degree. I checked the room for any sort of empty display, any shadow box, any holder. I checked the dining room, reading room, even a never-seen bedroom. Nothing. A knife like that surely wouldn't be just sitting out on a coffee table, and it wouldn't be tossed into a drawer at random. Which means there might have been some premeditation involved. Either there was a random collectible dagger sitting on this pseudo-country coffee table, or one of them had bought it from somewhere else. And how would the guy know where the girl keeps her keepsakes or collectibles? Was this self-defense? Did the guy bring it and plan to do this all along? I shook my head. None of it mattered. I was there to fix someone's fuck up, not piece together the events which led to them fucking up. But still, it was nagging me. Something didn't feel right. I finished the soda and I got to work mopping up the kitchen. It was a white vinyl floor, uninterrupted by cracks or grout. A splash of milk and it was good as new. The reading room, however, was a different story. It was a cheap shag carpet, and I couldn't even begin to guess whether it would survive my intense cleaning. The furniture in the room looked clean and passed the test with my UV light. The carpet, though, had clear prints leading all over it where I found my little friend. I snatched a metal spray can from my bag and gave the spot a light misting of milk before scrubbing cold water over it with a sponge to dilute the chemicals. The UV light still showed me the spots, nearly pitch black in the other compositions, though slightly more faint, so I repeated the process 3 more times until I was convinced it was clean. Then I did it once more for good measures. All that was left was the cat. That damned cat. I sighed and I sat down on the like-new carpet. The room was relaxing for sure, and if I wasn't currently under so much stress, I might have even fallen asleep there. The leather futon sat beneath the wide bay window edged by 2 potted plants whose leaves reached towards the rising sun outside. A desk with a new model MacBook lined the wall opposite. A black door was set into the wall beside the kitchen entrance, its brass knob catching the morning sunlight and throwing it around the room in strange patterns. Finally, I got to my feet and began the grueling work of pulling up the carpet to make sure nothing soaked through the boards underneath. When it was rolled up past the paw prints, I closed the blinds and I shined my UV light across the bottom of the carpet, and to my delight, it came up empty. That is to say, a nice pure purple. As I started laying it down, the light slipped from my hand and fell onto the floorboards. Void black erupted around my feet. A dazzling congregation of smears and splatters and streaks became suddenly visible all across the otherwise purple floor. I was stunned. Blood gets into the strangest places. My brain racked itself for an explanation. Any answer as to how a horror show ended up beneath a layer of carpet. The cat could have done this. Nothing could have. And the carpet was fine. I sat there pondering, and I realized the implications. Someone was murdered right here in this room before it was carpeted. With shaky hands, I lifted up my UV light to the walls. Streaks of gore flung themselves around the room against bright purple highlights. The blinds, the ceilings, the closed door, the knob blacker than the underground ocean. Carefully and slowly, I turned the door handle. The door opened and creaked. A set of wooden steps led down into the dark. I set the UV light to regular light and started my descent. The stairs came down to the center of a concrete room. The wall directly in front of them lined with tables and desks all stacked with various old books and papers. I didn't recognize the language or the characters that was written on them. When I looked at them, I couldn't decipher the language that was written on the whiteboard above them. I walked along the chaos and let my eyes gaze upon dozens of open books and papers, chock full of symbols and words in tongue unknown. Clavis Sepinte, Zenganographia, Ars Magna est Ultima, Boreas. Forgotten tomes of forgotten times piled themselves upon cracked wood and dusty shelves. I turned to my right and saw a cobbled together laboratory. Beakers and flasks, each containing unknown fluids and dust. Indescribable formula was written across the walls in patterns too complex for my mind to comprehend. I wanted to vomit. I wanted to run. I wanted to forget about this damnable place I have willingly stumbled into. When I turned once more and glimpsed the travesty behind the mounting staircase, I had to swallow the vomit which burned and climbed my quaking esophagus. 3 bodies hung from the iron hooks across the center altar, each one wholly disemboweled, their eyes seething pits which laid into their mouths just laying open. Clumps of gristle and flesh slumped from their hovering corpse into piles beneath their feet. Strings of veins and other intestines were strung across the spaces between, each meeting atop of the altar in an unholy tangle of black gore. A 4th and final hook empty at the circle's apex nearest the stairs. It seemed that one more victim could have completed the spiderweb of muscle and tendon, this blasphemous congregation of flesh and blood. I took a step forward, and I looked down as my boots slipped on something. A circle of dust, or ash, around the altar, now broken by my accidental insolence. The air grew cold. My heart called up in my throat. A voice deeper than the bowels of the earth echoed deafeningly around the insanity. Its tongue, unutterable and sharp, bringing with it black ballads of aeons beyond time. What the voice said, I do not know, but I can try sounding it out phonetically. Wed engonia, thelu, zeludu, inki delphia, con irfidit. My eyes began to roll to the back of my head. I fell to my knees in exasperated pleasure. Images etching frozen moments from places outside of existence flashed throughout my mind. A yawning infinity of writhing stars, mountains of flesh pulsating in intelligible rhythm, ground that is also the sky morphing into expanding into horrors beyond comprehensions. The shepherd, the glorious, sheeps of 1,000 eyes, the thin whine of accursed flutes. I hung the lady upon the dull iron hook. Her neck popped as the metal separated her vertebrae and poked through the front of her neck like a maggot retreating from a rotten corpse. I leaned down into the empty body bag at my feet, and I grasped the serrated blade before plunging it into her stiff body. I tore her open as her insides slopped out of a grotesque splatter of gruel. Her eyes melted down her face. Her mouth hung open. I grabbed a handful of intestine and began tying them into intricate knots. My heart was beating slowly. My breath came out in heavy rhythm. Something heavy shattered from miles away, cut through the infinite distance which I was from myself. And suddenly, I was here. Back in the present. Back in me. I dropped a handful of gore and turned to see the cat, the damned beautiful feline staring at me, head tilted from atop a makeshift laboratory, a shattered flask on the ground beneath it. Once I gathered myself from wherever my mind went, I wasted no time in running, and after grabbing my blood-caked survivor, I was up the steps in a matter of seconds. I quickly stamped back down the carpet of the reading room. I grabbed my bag, put the cat in the now open cage, and carried both to the kitchen. I flung open the drawers at random, and finally threw a handful of silverware into the microwave on max time. I was getting blood everywhere, but I didn't care. It wasn't mine. Back in the living room, I pulled a can of random chemicals and a lighter from my bag and began torching the curtains and paintings and furniture and more until I was standing in a miniature inferno. By the time the fire department arrived, the house had all but collapsed on itself. Over the following days, cops pulled 4 charred corpses from the heap of timber. And though they were rude homicides, the causes of death were inconclusive. Too much damage had been done to the bodies. Only one lead reached the cops. A report from a man driving by who swore he saw a blood-covered madman in a hazmat suit sprinting down the sidewalk holding a small cage. I write this now, an untold time after the incident, with a cat on my lap and a weight releasing from my chest. I write this simply as a way of moving on, an acceptance of things outside the realm of comprehension. I still clean, though, now for university. Restrooms, hallways, dorms. It isn't a happy existence, but neither is ours.